Hey everybody, welcome to the next part in the fire pathing spline tutorial. We're going to be going over the interface system, I believe, this time, and we may delve a little bit into the damage over time functions and the data table. So let's go ahead and get into it. Basically, what we're going to be trying to do is we want the collisions, when the player interacts with them, to send information to the player to keep track of. If you followed the dynamic collision tutorial I made, we're going to be using a similar system but modified slightly. So what we're going to do is we're going to create these bind events on overlap. And what I did last time is I kept track of these numbers inside the actual actor, but this time we're going to be keeping track of them inside of the player because we don't want the fire path spline to have to be calculating a bunch of extra stuff while we're also calculating like the functions and damage over time on the player. That's just extra work for the game. So when the fire spline isn't doing anything, we don't want it to be doing extra stuff basically. So to start with, what we're going to do here is we're going to add on a little bit of information to the collisions. So when the collisions spawn, this is when we want to add in the bind events. So we're going to pull off the same thing. We're going to do a reroute, make it cleaner. We're going to go ahead and just plug this in right here. We'll reroute again. And then we're going to be doing bind event to on component begin overlap. And then we also want to do a bind on component and overlap. Do another reroute. Okay. So just like before, we're going to go ahead and pull off of here. We're going to let's create event. We don't have any, so we're going to create one. Okay. And what we're going to do here, let's actually go ahead and create the second one as well. Event. We're going to pause right here because we actually need to add in a little bit more before we continue. So we've got the event set up. We're going to need to set up these functions in a minute. I'm not going to plug them in because that'll give you a compile error, so I'm just going to leave these right here for now. And what we're going to need to do is create a interface. So we're going to create an interface that controls all of our damage over time events. Basically, anytime you interact, it's going to simply carry over a little bit of data for the damage over time. So we'll call this API dot. Yeah, that's probably enough. Actually, I don't like all of those being. That's fine. Okay. So we'll open this up. Got our new function. Let's go ahead and just rename this to fire dot. Okay. Compile. And then for this, let's also do one more thing actually before we continue. Let's create an enumerator. this is going to be our damage over time. So we're going to make damage over time categories. So we'll do enum underscore DOT. And in here, just hit add. Let's make a couple just for the example here. We'll do fire, poison. You could even cover things like drowning in here potentially. Or you could have this be like an elemental table. So you could cover anything that would do tick damage to your character with kind of like pauses between it. You could put in here. I'll go ahead and add, I don't know, let's do acid. Okay. We're not going to cover all these. We're just going to do fire. Just adding those in there so we have an example for later. Okay, so we got our enum. Inside of our fire damage over time, let's go ahead and add an input. We're going to search up enum dot. So this is the enumerator I just made. And we'll name it DOT, sorry, Jesus, category. Pull this down. We'll leave default as fire. We're going to be changing that. And then I believe we actually want this in the output, not the input, but let's put it in both because for the minute I just can't remember. Do category. I'll just do category 1. Okay. Save. We'll come back and fix this once we remember which one it's actually supposed to be in. And then, so we've got the interface now. In the fire path spline, we want to go to class settings, go to interface, and I'll just put in dot. So there's our interface for the dot. And then I've got the player character blueprint already open. So you'll want to go ahead and whichever character you're using, open that. We'll go to class settings and we'll put in the same interface here. Save. Okay, so we got most of that set up. Now we'll go back to the, oh, sorry, this is the custom collision. I'm just going to close this. We'll go back to the fire path spline. And in the, this should be the overlap. We'll do other actor. And what we want to do is we want to check to make sure it has the actual interface itself. So I believe it's here. Does implement interface. And then we want to search for our interface. So all this is doing is it's, when it overlaps an actor, it checks for the damage over time. Returns to a branch. True. Okay. And then we'll want to take this, and if it does implement the interface, we'll want to do a message. So we'll do dot, so message. So the target is whatever actor comes across. So if it does implement the interface, then we send them this. We would plug in which category it is right here. Since this is the fire path spline, you could set up a variable that's just whatever damage type it is. And then you could just pull that out right here and plug it in. I'm going to go ahead and just do that. So it's fire. So yeah, I don't think we need this one. I'll I'll keep going though, and we'll double check later. So we got that. So now whenever it overlaps, sends message, and just to verify that that's working, let's go ahead and open our event graph here. Let's make a new graph. Oh, jeez, wrong one. So we want a new graph here. I'm gonna name it our T graph. You don't have to make a new graph necessarily. I like to though, because there's gonna be a fair amount of stuff you might want to put in here to handle events and whatnot. And we don't want it to get too confusing, so we'll just make the whole graph for itself. So we'll do DOT which one is it? I think it's override function. There it is. Okay. So we got category for everyone. So we're gonna pull out here. So but just to make sure it's working, let's go ahead and just set up a print string right here. This, and then we will just make it the enum. Turn node. And then we need to make sure everything is connected in here. Okay. Currently on end overlap, there's nothing happening. This should be good. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. So if this works, we should see something up here. There we go. So a lot of ticks there, that's fine. As long as we're in the fire, it's ticking, and we're not, it goes away. Okay, so yeah, that's working perfectly. Just gonna delete this now. Okay, so this is where a data table would probably start to come in handy, because we're gonna need to set up things like the damage for the fire and other stuff, but let's go ahead. We're gonna need some functions for the actual damage over time itself. Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and set up the data table. So we'll do this. Ah, right. We're gonna need the structure. Let's go ahead and do print structure dot. So we got the structure. Let's go ahead and rename it. So dot struct. Gonna need a couple of things here. To start with, we can use the enum dot. Let's do dot total ticks. So this is going to be basically how long the damage over time will last. We're going to set it to an integer. And probably can go ahead and add the damage here as well. So we'll change that to a float. So category, total ticks, the amount of damage it does. Okay, that should be good for now. Okay, close that, go back here. Now let's go ahead and make the data table. We'll pick our structure, so DOT, what is this? Collision, ignore that, do DOT struct, of course the autosave, DOT, DT, DOT, this up. I don't know why this is always over here. Kind of annoying. Go ahead and pull these out. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and add one. In there. Okay, so for the row name itself, let's go ahead and just rename this to fire. If you have multiple instances or types of fire that you want to basically function the same, you could make new categories for them, either in the enums, or you could leave the enum category the same and change the total tick amount. It's typically better to spread everything out, but let's see. Our name. Go ahead and make a couple here. For this one, let's do poison. For this one, we'll do acid. Again, we're not really gonna use either of these. We're just gonna kind of set them up. So then we'll change the image. Let's just do 10 total ticks. Let's do 7. So what we're gonna do, there's 2 ways to handle damage over time. Either you can run a timer or something that every time it hits a certain marker, then it does a tick of damage, and when the timer runs out, it stops. The way we're going to be doing it is we're going to set up a amount of time between each damage instance. So let's say we'll do probably like a second. So every 1 second it'll tick, and every time it ticks, it'll remove 1 from this number inside of our player, and when it hits 0, it'll stop ticking. So for these, I'll just set them up. We'll do 10, and we'll do reverse. And for acid, we'll do like 3 ticks, and we'll make the damage higher. If you want certain damage instances to be reduced by something like armor, you could put some of that stuff in here, but it can also be handled inside the player character itself or inside the AI actor, whichever way you're doing it. Okay, so we got our data table. Let's go ahead and close this up here. All right, everybody, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up here. We got all the basics set up for moving into the actual damage of the player character or any other AI you want. So we'll work on that next episode. Hopefully that will wrap everything up for us. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have a good day.